Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve Ramona and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so thrilled and happy you joined us today. We dedicate this podcast to explore the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose. We believe that when we approach our work and our lives, we can have a servant's heart. And with that servant heart, you can truly make a difference. So we created this podcast so you get motivated, inspired, and educated to serve more, but also make an impact in your world. Now, you're going to listen to my guests today all the way from Paris, France, where the Olympics are just finishing, the Paralympics and Olympics just finished, and she's got great stories about that. But you're going to be so blown away by her and her knowledge and her humbleness and her servitude, servant heart. But while you're listening to her today, I want you to think about how you're going to serve today, yourself and somebody else, because you got to do both. If you don't love yourself, it's hard to serve others. But also try to create some impact today. Again, the key word is today. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but again, still have people come, oh, I waited a week. I still haven't tried to serve somebody. You wait, you miss out. So listen to the show first. Listen to this incredible information you're going to get, and then go ahead and serve and make an impact today. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by our incredible partner, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine being part of this incredible community of high-income business owners and entrepreneurs from every industry in the world. Together, they're building this thought leader platform to make an impact and change in the world. If you'd like to be part of this community or learn more, just reach out to me. I'll get you more of the information. With that being said, impact and change in the world. Now, I talk about your world. This is what my guest is doing today, and it's about emotional intelligence we'll get into, and behaviors and things that for some people are real hard to change, and for some people, it's like a switch. And she's going to help you and guide you and take you through that journey. Sally, I want to welcome you to our incredible show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Steve. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we had a great conversation before the show, but you talked about emotional intelligence. What is that?
It's a really good question, because I think in the 2000s, it became a buzzword. And so everyone would say it, but I don't know how many people actually knew what it meant. And so emotional intelligence is the capacity to understand and read our own emotions. And when we are aware of them, we are able to regulate, we are able to manage them. I don't like the word manage, but it's a word that's been used in this discipline. I love the word regulate, because we can regulate. We can regulate when we're feeling really, negative emotions intensely, when we're feeling disappointed or angry or sad. I don't think we should manage that. I think we can regulate it, but it's mainly a set of skills of self-awareness. So understanding ourselves, having a positive outlook, having empathy for ourselves and for others. And so there are a few of those. And then there are also skills that are all about the social intelligence. So how do we deal with other people? How do we build healthy relationships? And when we have a practice that is really developed, then we're able to inspire, we're able to coach, we're able to lead, we're able to mentor. So it really is about knowing and understanding ourselves and being able to regulate, and then using those skills to better read others' emotions and create healthier relationships with them. I talk of emotional intelligence as a practice. Daniel Goldman really democratized the way we talk about emotional intelligence when he wrote a book in 1995. The title was Your EQ Matters More Than Your IQ. And that book really opened up this topic and really democratized the access to all the research that we have today, and that explains why it's important to connect with our emotions and why they're really good information to take in. They're nothing to run away from. They're nothing to be afraid of. It's data. It's data, and it's our brain. It has a secret life, and it's giving us all these signs and all of these pieces of information, and we can take them and we can use them to better understand what's going on for us and how we can show up once we have actually understood and once we have gained that awareness of what's been going on for us. And only when we have developed our individual skills, we are able to then improve our social skills and our relational skills. And the tricky part about emotional intelligence is that most of us want to move directly into management. We want solutions. But what I love about practicing emotional intelligence is that you always have to go back to the foundation, and the foundation is yourself. Being self-aware, understanding what's happening for you so that you're able to understand what's happening for others. And most people show up for coaching and emotional intelligence because they want to become better leaders. They want to be better parents. So there's the other part, right? The relationship with others. And we always bring them back to center, as we say, just developing their own skills, their own connection with themselves, because then it's so much easier to put yourself in other people's shoes and really understand what journey they're on and why they're having the behavior that they're having. So I'd say, long story short, being self-aware and then being able to regulate and applying all of these skills with others.
It's a heck of a message, really powerful too. One thing I love that you said about emotional intelligence and being intelligent, book smart, I guess is probably the word. There's a number of very successful people that didn't graduate college, didn't graduate high school, because they've built the EI, their emotional intelligence. I want to dive into skills a little bit, because I think a servant's heart is a skill. Some people are like, wow, that's blown away, but it is. Talk about skills on the power of, because anybody can have that skill, but what do they got to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I completely agree with you. And I think it has to do directly with the skill and the competency of having empathy. So I see a lot of people show up, they're great leaders, they're great performers, but for example, they will create a lot of damage because they're not putting themselves in their employees' shoes. They're not trying to understand what's happening for the team and why the team is maybe not meeting the expectations. And the empathy is really the most important component. If we neglect the other 11, we can only focus on that. So I absolutely agree that having a servant's heart, that's definitely an AI skill. Doing what's ethically correct, doing what works for the greater good. The empathy part is really important because it's the way we connect to others. Our social brains, there's a standard, let's say, cognitive level of empathy, which is just seeing that someone is going through a hardship and thinking that must be hard. That is really the standard basic level that we should offer when we're practicing AI. And then we can increase it a little bit. So for example, we can practice emotional empathy. That must be hard and it must hurt. So I feel it in my body. I feel it. My social brain is telling me that, oh gosh, whatever that person is going through, that must have hurt. And then there's the compassion. There are different ways to experience compassion. Maybe I want to help the person. Maybe I want to let them know that I know that it's hard and I know that it must have hurt. So the person knows they're not alone, they're not isolated. I'm offering my support. And so this is why the servant's heart is definitely an AI skill, because there are all these different dimensions that we can experiment. Do I just understand that this person is going through a hardship, and so it's difficult for them to perform, it's difficult for them to give their best to the world, it's difficult for them to bring out the best impact that they're capable of, and maybe I know it and I feel it in my heart, and that creates emotions for me too. So it's not only cognitive, I'm not just being smart about it, I'm even feeling it in my body. And then maybe I'm taking that even a little bit further, and I'm telling the person, and I'm showing up for the person, and I'm even offering my support. So I would say that if we want to lead with a servant's heart, those are the different dimensions we would explore.
Empathy is,
and then we would be applying any AI skill.
And empathy, it's got to be, because That's what a servant heart does. A perfect servant is, I'm empathy. Let me help you. Let me see what I
Mhm.
can do to support you. Interesting you mentioned sports, because right what came to my head is many videos you see where a runner in the Olympics, maybe not this Olympics, but they fall down and the guy stops in front of them and goes back and picks them up. Or
Yeah,
there's a story of a Japanese equestrian in 1932, and this is an animal empathy, which I believe is just as powerful as human. He was
absolutely.
winning the gold, jumped the last jump, and noticed his horse was dying. It was older, and he stopped, jumped off the horse, feet away from winning the gold medal, and lost. Didn't win a medal because of empathy. He's got a plaque on a wall now in Riverside, California, that his legacy's forever from empathy. Now, people won gold medals and won awards. They don't have a plaque on the wall. Empathy is such, if there's a rewardable thing, I love that. So let's take EI, and how does that work for somebody listening that's an entrepreneur, business
Mhm.
owner, and says, God, this sounds great, Sally, but how do I work it?
I think most people come because they do have a higher level of empathy than just that cognitive level. If you're interested in showing up as a better leader and as a better human being, then generally that says a lot about you and about your emotional intelligence. But generally, the way we work with this is we start by an assessment. So we ask you to answer a few questions about how you perceive yourself. We try to understand what are the negative voices that you have in your head. And those negative voices, they're hard on you, but they're also hard on the people you interact with. And we can complete that assessment. For example, we can ask people who work with you, people who interact with you on the daily basis, so family, friends, a partner, even children. It's really interesting to have different answers to see if there's an alignment between how you perceive yourself and how you show up. And then we can see if there's a gap. And if there's a gap, we discuss it because it means that the brain is activating self-defense mechanisms. Maybe at work you don't feel safe, and so you're showing up with a different posture. Maybe at home you feel super safe and you've almost taken a few relationships for granted, so you're not even putting in that effort of being intentional with the communication. There's so much we can learn by just pausing and asking those few questions about how does the person show up, how do they manage a hardship, how long does it take for them to recover from a negative experience, a negative emotion, or a conflict? How do they feel about conflicts? And don't get me wrong, no one feels great about conflict. No one says, yay, I love to go and be in a conflict or handle a conflict. It's not a piece of cake for any of us. But for some people, they will really want to leave that conflict with a win-win situation. It's important to them that they have not just won whatever debate they've had with the other person. They don't want the other person to have just totally lost in that conversation. They don't want to be the loser either. They don't want to be, in the position of losing, but they really just care about finding something that works for everyone. So there are all these different areas of application, but we always start by assessing. And if there's one thing to remember from our show, for any of our listeners, I would really want to emphasize on that. Emotional intelligence is so much more about being and just being aware and introspecting and checking in with ourselves more than it is about analyzing and just being super rational and trying to do what's optimized and hitting the biggest number in the shortest time. This is productivity, this is performance, and practicing emotional intelligence will only increase productivity and performance, but that is not the goal. The goal is really to be present and be more mindful and just really showing up as the best version of yourself. Because the brain is really incredibly quick, you will jump to conclusions more quickly than you would think. You will interpret things in a very personal way, and you just think this is the reality of the world. This is how it is, right? This is why I experienced how I experienced things. So this is the reality of the world. And in EQ, we also talk a lot about the framework of perception. So when things happen, there are these circumstances. We perceive them. We don't say we see them, we say we perceive them, because it literally is a matter of perception. And then we interpret them. That's when people say analyze, we say interpret, because it's very personal. Our experience is very subjective and personal. And then an emotion is created based on that interpretation. And that emotion creates the response. So most people want better responses. They want to be more patient with their children. They want to have better reactions to how their employees show up, even when they're, not being very productive or very performant. They want to handle conflicts with grace. We all want the better responses. But to be able to obtain those, we have to respect the sequence, and we have to understand, why are we generating these emotions? What are the interpretations that we're working with? And once we understand all of that, we can come back and try to really acknowledge our perception, acknowledge that there will be biases in our perception, and that most of what we know about the world is just really based on our experience. But our brain will tell us it's the reality. This is it, Steve. Whatever you think, that's the reality of the world. My brain will tell me, Sally, you are absolutely right. That person, they're not putting in the effort, they're not putting in the intention. So we're only seeing everything from our own lens. And this is the hardship. This is the hardship of being emotionally intelligent. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, why is it so hard? And I said, because you have a beautiful brain. Your brain is incredible. You can't even imagine. Depending on the research you go for, in the past 10 years, there have been many studies, and most of them say that the brain takes between 32,000 and 65,000 decisions a day. We're not even aware of that. We're taking all of these decisions based on interpretations and perceptions. There's no time for us to assess all of that. And some of the researchers say that we can influence 5%. 5% of our communication, 5% of how we show up. So that's little. That's not so much. But the brilliant news is that you influence 5%, except your brain is so quick. If you repeat something, it generally becomes a habit. If you repeat it and then you create the pattern for yourself, it becomes a habit. So you start by that 1%, by that 2%, and you think, oh gosh, what's the point? I'm practicing emotional intelligence, and where will that lead me? Well, it can lead to incredible places, because that 1% practiced every day, that creates so much progress. And one of my favorite things I would say about emotional intelligence is that it's exponential. The moment you start practicing it, there are no limits, Steve. So our EQ, that's totally determined by our genetics. By age 12, there's really not much we can do to change the intellectual capacities that we have. But our emotional related skills, the more you practice, the more you're able to rewire your brain, if I may. You create new circuits. So you're creating different interpretations. Those will create different emotions. Those will create different responses. Once you understand the elasticity that you have access to, the possibilities, they're limitless.
Your passion's amazing. And we talked about pause before the show with the Olympics and audience. This is a perfect example. Meditation is another way you can pause. But think about this, audience. Everybody gets this. When the Olympics started, the world paused. Maybe there was bombings and stuff. I don't know, but it seemed like the whole world, and you mentioned you were in Paris, that paused. Imagine you do that in your business or your personal life. Just do the pause. And I love that. I'm excited to say this because I'm a James Clear fan, big time. So I see why we connected. Talk about his philosophy, what you use from that to help you grow and help you grow your business.
Well, one of the most beautiful things he actually taught me, I loved reading his books. And one of the most beautiful things he taught me was stop looking for the meaning of life and create meaningful things with your life. So I remember, spent a big part of my life just trying to find the answers, as if there was one reality, as if there was, one truth that I needed to find. And in emotional intelligence, because we're always going back to recentering, to reconnecting with ourselves, practicing that allowed me to realize that, Sally, the answer is not out there. It's not like there's some piece of wisdom and I don't know, there's a sensei, like a Japanese sensei, and he's on a tree and he's waiting for you to go on that journey and meet with them and get the wisdom from them. The wisdom can be literally in every brain. So when I read that sentence of his, I just fell in love with it, because you can create meaningful things with your life if you start practicing the pausing and introspecting and just asking yourself a few questions. The other day I was talking to someone and the person told me, I'm asking myself questions. I'm asking myself, why are you doing that? Why is he doing that? And I told the person, what if we reframe those questions to, what do I need to do to get there with that person? What is not working? What could be improved? The whys, that's also like looking for the truth outside and looking for life's meaning as if there was like one mantra, just exactly one, and that mantra held all of the truth. And so when he talked about creating meaningful things, if I want to create a meaningful relationship and I see that it is not working, of course that is frustrating. So I acknowledge the frustration. Of course, it makes me sad because I love that person and I want for this to work. So first acknowledging my emotions, not judging myself for whatever it is that I am feeling, and then just pausing and asking myself different questions, questions that allow for answers and solutions, not ones that will take me back to being in a limited space.
Yeah.
So we talk
Yeah.
about questions that give us spaciousness.
Yeah.
When we ask
Yeah.
those questions, I'm asking myself, why are they doing that? And why is it not working? That's very limited. The answer can be only one thing. Just like me looking for, meaning of life. I mean, there's not one meaning. There are so many meanings. There are so many dimensions. The other thing I loved about reading his books was when he talks about smaller habits. Now I also apply sooner habits because the brain can get a little bit dramatic. We have dramatic voices. So, for example, when we think of goals, we think about big goals. We compare ourselves to other people, and we compare ourselves to their achievements. We don't know their journey. We don't know their story. We don't know what emotions are showing up for them. We only see a facade, and we're all literally just acting as if everything's okay, right? But in the inside, there's literally a secret life of the brain. So when he talks about smaller habits, I love that because it just allowed for this very, 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 very big vision to chunk back into smaller pieces that the brain can attain, that we can celebrate, because that's also very important in the practice of emotional intelligence, just celebrating all the small milestones, because we're checking in. We're marking the progress, and we are acknowledging that maybe 1 week ago when someone started this topic with me, I would go crazy, and now I'm able to talk about it while being a little bit calmer. That by itself is a progress. Yeah, maybe I'm not showing up with the amount of grace I'd love to show up with, but I made progress. Maybe 1 week ago, I was unable to have this conversation with my partner, with my employee, with someone in my team. So we're all about celebrating those small milestones. And I loved in his book when he talked about the smaller and the sooner habits. The sooner habits is also amazing because we tend to condition our happiness. I'll be happy when my podcast hits this number of listeners. I'll be happy when my business achieves this revenue. And so the problem is we're always adding when and if and when and if. And so we're literally like pushing away our happiness. We're pushing away that feeling of contentment. We're just pushing away that feeling of, I'm celebrating myself and I'm acknowledging my progress. And that is so painful. It's such a painful feeling to go through. And we do that for literally everything. I have a toddler, and I remember like one point I caught myself thinking, we'll rest when she's elder, or we'll go back to working out when she's gonna go to school. We'll do this, we'll do that. And then I realized, but why would I do that? I'm completely missing the moment I'm in. She's at this age, I'm at this age. This is the body I have today. It's healthy, it's capable of working out. What tells me that I'll be able to work out in a year, in two? What tells me that, my health, as I'll taken it for granted, and it's like, the word owes me something.
Yeah.
So that was, this conditioning is also very, very heavy on our hearts. It's very heavy on our brains. It's always pushing back happiness, like it's something external to us that we need to find and touch with our hands. And we really practice this self-awareness. It really is the foundation to increasing our EQ. And even though a lot of people come because they want to talk about leadership, they want to talk about coaching or mentoring, they want a very deep level of emotional intelligence, we always go back to the basics. How are you treating yourself? How are you treating your brain? How do you show up when your emotions arise? Are you denying them? Are you neglecting them? We all want to build healthy habits. So we have to go back to doing the basics. The basics are checking in with ourselves and acknowledging things however they show up. Some people will say in coaching, I'm a leader, I should do better. I used to tell myself, you're a coach, you should regulate better. But I'm also a human being. I'm a human being. I'm a mother. I'm an entrepreneur. I was an employee. I was like you put on yourself that pressure. You compare yourself to other people, and there's this bit that, for example, we do define goals in emotional intelligence. That's actually a skill. Most people are surprised when I say that, but we have like goal achievement is actually a skill. But there's a big difference. In emotional intelligence, you set up goals and then you check in to mark your progress. And when you're not hitting the progress, you ask yourself what would have helped and what can help the next time.
Learn.
So the check-ins are really, really important for you to create a better future, not to ruminate, not to be angry with yourself, not to be hard on yourself. And in marking the progression, it's always your progression. So it's your journey. How much have you progressed now versus where you were 6 months ago? It's never, how is John doing and how is Patrick doing and how do you relate and how much money have they made and how much money have you made? So I love that recentering that James Clear talks a lot about. It's really in you. You create what you need. It's not finding, it's creating. And I find a big power in, using those different words. A lot of people, myself included, I used to say, I want to find peace. I want to find balance. Now I know I need to create it. It's nothing that I will find somewhere external to my heart.
EI is tough because you have to go backwards, illogical. That's why it's tough for people is, we're all told, especially in America, you're in Paris, maybe the same way, move forward, move forward, move forward, move forward. But sometimes, well, not sometimes, when you step back in clarity and self-awareness, it's beautiful what you just said. The other thing is I learned 10 years ago from a very wealthy guy, very successful, get better 1% every day, which is what you were saying. If you started today, it's September 6th, that's 60 days, you're up 60% by January 1st, 2025. You're going to grow, your income's going to grow, your business is going to grow, your personal life's going to grow because you're getting better. But taking a step back to be aware and love it. We're coming to the end here. Time flew. I knew it would with you. It was just awesome. So I always like to end the show with a great question, a fun question. So we're in Paris. You've reserved a table of 4 at a restaurant. You're, of course, sitting in one table. The other 3 empty seats. Who would you invite, whether they're dead or alive? Why would you invite them? But more importantly, I think, is what food would you order?
I love your question. I would invite Nelson Mandela. The world needs Nelson Mandelas right now.
Amen.
He was one of the biggest inspirations for me growing up. I loved reading his work and his speeches. And I love how he insists about keeping hope, even in the darkest of times. And I know this year has been very hard on all of us. For me, coming originally from the Middle East, for people in the US with the elections and how the direction things are taking for us in Europe and in France as well. And I just keep on thinking about him. I would love to take him to dinner or to lunch right now and just say, hey, the world seems dark right now. Give me some light. And one of my favorite quotes of him is, even in the times that humanity tests me the hardest, I'm keeping my hope. So I just, remind myself of that. So I would definitely invite him. I would invite Gandhi. I'm always reading about his life and I'm just really trying to understand, how did he understand so much without doing all of this research and work? Like, how? He was incredible. He really was a visionary. And I would invite John Kabat-Zinn, who really is the father of mindfulness as we know it today. I mean, in our world, in the Western world, and who helped a lot of people deal with diseases and with a lot of health problems, just using meditation and mindfulness. I would invite these 3. And I would order onion soup because it's one of my favorite things to eat in France.
Okay, beautiful. A little onion soup.
Onion soup. And I would order a creme brulee for dessert. And then if I need to only choose one main course, that's so hard. Honestly, my French friends would go, Sally, these don't go together. But I would have a raclette, which is you have cheese, you have really nice Swiss cheese, and you make it melt, and you just use that on food, and it's beautiful. And Paris already got cloudy and rainy, so almost feels like winter already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll order 2 creme brulees because I love those. So me and you'll be sitting there enjoying our creme brulee with all these wonderful folks.
Perfect.
You've been an incredible guest. I
Thank you
love
for
your
having me.
servant's heart. Oh, you're so welcome. How can people support you, find you, reach out to you, connect with you?
I would say my website, so www.hayati.co. Hayat is Hayatti. I explain my work there, so I explain the trainings I offer in corporations. I still do that, but I'm a bit picky. I really work with sponsors who really care about their teams. I don't want someone to tick a box of just, getting a training or AI training or a like development training. I want a sponsor who can tell me my team is struggling with this and this and this, and I want us to talk about this and this and this, and I want something that we can build together that is intentional and that is really tailored. And then in terms of coaching, there are a few topics I love applying AI to. So I talk a lot about burnout and living in intensity and overwhelm. I talk a lot about not just being managers, but really being AI empowered leaders and what that looks like. And in terms of entrepreneurship, I also am noticing since I started coaching full time and I left my careers at Google and Microsoft, that a lot of emotions show up for you when you're an entrepreneur. All the negative voices in the head that I talked about earlier in the show. Oh gosh, Steve, it's like waves and waves of these emotions. And um, somehow you are just left there with all of these emotions to deal with. And some people will be so hard on themselves, or they will be so productive and performant. And there's this thing, I'm okay. But I ask people, how is your sleep? How are you eating? Are you snacking? Are you eating healthy food? How are your relationships? How do you feel about parenting your children or being with your parents or being with your partners? These are for me the big signals. It's not how good is the company doing or how much money are you making. This is how I know my client is doing great, okay, not so great. So these are the different areas where I love to apply emotional intelligence. And so if anyone is interested in that kind of work, I would be honored and humbled to support them in their journey.
Perfect. And we'll get all the information, audience, in the show notes, so you'll be able to find it on YouTube and eventually the podcast. Thank you again, Sally. I'm thinking of somebody else, Sally. Look at, hey, even hosts screw up, and I admit it, and that's okay. But audience, do me a favor, comment on the YouTube channel because she'll be out in a couple of days. You see this show, give us comments, good, bad, give me feedback. Like I said, if it's bad, that's okay. I want this to be a great show for you, and I need your help to do that. And if you have comments for Sally, just let me know, and I'll get them to her, or go to her website, and I'm sure there's a way to connect with her there. Also, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's in the show notes because there's incredible guests like I had today with Sally, who's just awesome. You'll be able to go through, and here's the other thing. You'll have access to her, so you'll go right back to her if you want to watch this again or listen to this again. What a great opportunity to do that. You just click on the channel and there she is. So go ahead and share it with family and friends. If you know somebody that needs EI, this is the perfect show you want to share with them. And actually, you're serving them and you're giving them a gift. And as always, me and Sally want to thank you so much for listening or watching this podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everybody.